Howdy everyone, it's Sam. Hope you're all doing really well. If you're new around here, hope I can get you to consider liking the content and subscribing to the channel. And if you are a regular around these here parts, thank you very much for the continuous support. Let's look at the beaten grand finalists of 2022 and their 2023 season. Let's have a look at the Parramatta Eels. Parramatta Eels have the honour of being the home side in hosting the opener for the 2023 NRL season on Thursday night. Their opponents are the Melbourne Storm, who they have had the wood over in recent years. This one, again, Thursday night, Parramatta versus Melbourne, a blockbuster way to kick things off. Not particularly my favourite two teams that are kicking things off, but allegedly or reportedly, these are two of the biggest membership fan bases colliding. But I still bet you it doesn't sell out the joint. I bet you. So that's their opponents for round one, Parramatta. Round number two, they're still at home. So they start the year with 2 home games, which is very nice. They host the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks. Friday, 6 p.m, Parramatta versus Cronulla. These two sides met just the once on the one occasion last year. That was round 2 or round 3 at PointsBet Stadium, and the Sharkies won an absolute thriller. It was a great contest between the two, and this will be equally so. Really looking forward to how this contest goes down. Their first away trip from CommBank Stadium comes in round 3, where they have to travel to 4 Pines Park to take on the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles on a Thursday night. And you'd reckon Tom Trbojevic would be back by then, maybe even earlier, but he'll definitely be there for round 3, surely, against the Parramatta Eels. Round number 4, they're back in familiar territory. They're back at CommBank Stadium, but it's the big grand final rematch against the Penrith Panthers, and that one is taking place on a Thursday night. Round number 5, to complete their first section for 2023, they have their first ever game at Allianz Stadium on a Thursday night against the Sydney Roosters. So the strength of opposition inside those first 5 rounds is a little bit daunting. Penrith, Roosters, Melbourne, Cronulla, Manly, you would say would be the easiest, with all due respect, based off of their forms of 2022. But they do have 3 home games, a trip up to 4 Pines Park where they won at last year. They have the excitement. They can get some energy and momentum behind them by knowing that it's their first ever game at Allianz Stadium against the Roosters. The grand final rematch is obviously in there, and they have the honor of hosting the first game of 2023. It's a great it's a great start for the Parramatta Eels as far as exposure goes and special games. The spotlight's well and truly going to be on them inside the first 5 rounds, and deservedly so. They were one of the 2 teams that featured in the grand final. But so far as strength of opposition goes, man, that is a very, very difficult start to begin 2023. So, after the Eels play the Roosters on a Thursday night, their next game is not until the next round on the Monday, because they are the away side on this occasion. They take on the West Tigers on the now traditional annual Easter Monday clash. So that's well and truly over a week worth of rest. And I guess maybe they may need it just because of the strength of opposition. But to start off section 2 of their campaign in 2023, they are the away side to the West Tigers at a core stadium. Hopefully they can get 50,000 people at that game. And why not? I mean, last year's was one of the best games of 2022. So a massive, again, the spotlight is well and truly on Parramatta. Round number 7, well, how could eyes not be on this game? It always is. It's arguably the best rivalry in the NRL, probably the second best. Parramatta Eels versus the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. This is a Channel 9 Sunday afternoon game back at CommBank Stadium. And fingers crossed that Bulldogs are in some sort of nice form and same with Parramatta, because that could very well sell out. I think that could be absolutely huge. So that is the first of 3 home games for Parramatta Eels starting in round number 7. So they host the Bulldogs. Then they take their annual game to Darwin for a Friday night Channel 9 encounter against the Brisbane Broncos at TO Stadium in Darwin. They then come back home to CommBank Stadium for round 8, and they host the Newcastle Knights on a Friday night for a 6 o'clock kickoff. So 3 straight home games for the Parramatta Eels. One of them is in Darwin, but they don't have too bad of a record. I know they lost last year there to the North Queensland Cowboys, but they're not too bad. And I think the last time they played Broncos in Darwin, they absolutely pulverised them. So that's 3 straight home games for the Parramatta Eels. And then to round things off, they are a part of the last match of Magic Round on Sunday twilight. The Gold Coast Titans, technically the home side, take on the Parramatta Eels. And Section 2, to put in a nutshell, they've got Tigers on Easter Monday, Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, a Darwin trip against Broncos, Newcastle at CommBank, and then a trip up to Suncorp to take on the Titans. So there's a period where they go Darwin, Sydney, and then back up to going up to Queensland for the first fair dinkum time this year. I think maybe that's where they might start to feel the first bit of fatigue for 2023. And just quietly, both Gold Coast versus Parramatta games last year, they had 2 of them, were absolute corkers. So hopefully that's going to be a great way to finish off Magic Round. While we're about to overlook Section 3 of 2023, I must say that round 10 against the Gold Coast Titans is going to be the first of 3 straight away games for the Parramatta Eels. So round 10 against the Titans up at Suncorp, a part of Magic Round. So to kick off Section 3 of their season, they have a trip down to Canberra at GIO Stadium Saturday 7:30. It's a semi-final rematch. The Parramatta Eels and the Canberra Raiders have played a couple of blowouts, especially over recent seasons, but there was one game last year where Eels beat Raiders on a Sunday afternoon, and it was a beauty. It was an absolute beauty. 1 week later, in round 12, they are the away side to the South Sydney Rabbitohs, but the location, the venue, the stadium is yet to be determined, and the contest is scheduled to take place on a Friday night. You'd reckon it'd be Sydney Olympic Park, or I'm not too sure why. I don't know where the game is being taken place, but they are the away side to the South Sydney Rabbitohs on a Friday night. Then in round 13, this is where the Origin Stars are being pulled from contests, and the game that they've got, they don't have a bye. They host the North Queensland Cowboys. Round 13, Friday night, Channel 9 game. So the likes of Junior Paulo, Regan Campbell-Gillard, and then for the North Queensland Cowboys, Valentine Holmes, potentially Murray Taulagi, and Tom Dearden. It's going to be quite an even contest, man. And just by off the top of my head, more forwards will be leaving Parramatta than backs. More backs will be leaving than forwards for the Cowboys. I don't know, man. It's going to be a pretty interesting contest, man. It's going to be really interesting to see how it goes. Finally, they have their first bye of 2023 in round 14. So after Origin, the Stars, the entire squad get a rest. And look, while there's Not a whole lot of travel, a whole lot of travel for the Parramatta Eels. The strength of opposition is gnarly, man, to start their first half of 2023. Shifting into round 15, their final part of 2023. It's a match against the old rivals in the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, and this is another Monday afternoon game, public holiday contest. Bulldogs, Eels, Monday, or King's birthday, Monday, 4 o'clock. So to round out their third section for 2023, Raiders, Rabbitohs, Cowboys in an Origin affected game. They have their first bye, and then they have a game against the Bulldogs. It just, man, there's not a whole lot of reprieve, is there, in this bloody schedule for the Parramatta Eels? Section 4 starts on a Saturday, 5:30 p.m. kickoff. They are back at CommBank Stadium and they host the Manly Warringah Seagulls at 5:30 p.m. And then they shift out to the airport again. They hop on the plane to travel to the Sunshine Coast and they take on the Redcliffe Dolphins for the first time ever. And that game is happening on a Saturday again, but this time a 3 p.m. kickoff for the Parramatta Eels. So Dolphins and Eels first time ever up at the Sunshine Coast Stadium. They then have a bye, which is quite nice because I think that's going to be the round where Origin players are being plucked again. Then they are back for 2 straight home games after their bye in round 19 and 20. Round 19, they host the New Zealand Warriors at CommBank on a Saturday afternoon. And then 1 week later, they are hosting the Gold Coast Titans for a Sunday twilight fixture at CommBank Stadium. So the strength of opposition does finally ease off on the Eels inside section 4 of their campaign. But that's the part of the season where players start to feel the pinch of the grueling season. So Manly, Dolphins, a bye, Warriors and Titans. I think that could be a very fruitful section for their 2023 campaign. Well, what the hell are the Parramatta Eels going to look like? Where are they going to be when the run to the finals kicks off in round 21? Well, they have 2 away trips back to back to kick off their run to the finals, and it probably doesn't get much tougher than a trip to North Queensland at Queensland Country Bank Stadium, Saturday, 7:30 p.m. It's the first time ever that the Eels will play at QCB Stadium throughout the regular season. Yes, they beat the Cowboys in the preliminary final up there in Townsville last year, but this is their first regular season game ever up at QCB Stadium. 1 week later, they traveled down to, well, I don't actually bloody know. They're taking on the Melbourne Storm, but because of the FIFA Women's World Cup, the Melbourne Storm will not be allowed to use Amy Park. So it is in round 22, a Friday night Channel 9 game, the Storm versus the Parramatta Eels. Where that venue is, I don't know. It could be in Geelong. It could be at Marvel Stadium. It could be in Adelaide. I'm not too sure. That is all to be revealed. And then they are back at home at CommBank Stadium, Sunday, 2 o'clock kickoff, an underrated rivalry, in my opinion. The Eels versus the Dragons, Sunday, 2 o'clock in round 23. And then from round 24, in round 24, sorry, they are up at the Gabba. They are only one of 3 or 4 teams that have been selected to play up at the Gabba, while the Brisbane Broncos can't use Suncorp Stadium because of the aforementioned FIFA Women's World Cup. The Broncos and Eels do battle Friday night, Channel 9 at the Gabba. To round out their final 2 games with 3 rounds remaining, round 25 is a home game against the Sydney Roosters, Friday night Channel 9 contest. That is their last home game at CommBank at Paradise for 2023. In round 26, their final home and away regular season game, they are away at Bluebet Stadium for a grand final rematch against the Penrith Panthers, and that is a Thursday night Channel 9 game, with the Parramatta Eels being selected as the team to have the bye. 1 week before the finals. They are the team to have a bye, that bye in the final round of the regular season. That could mean that they get robbed. It means that they could fall into the top 8 by default. Um, that could mean anything for the Parramatta Eels. If you chose the Redcliffe Dolphins, for example, or the Dragons, for example, to have that bye in round 27, a lot of people probably would, just sort of blink and go, okay, no worries. But the Parramatta Eels have a fair dinkum chance of making the top 8, maybe even top 4 this year. So they could fall into the 8 in the final round of the season. Whereas, maybe you've got a team like the Gold Coast Titans who lose in the final rounds, and the Parramatta Eels just fall into the 8 by gaining those 2 competition points due to the bye. That's going to be such a. I personally would feel incredibly stressed if I was a Parramatta Eels supporter, or if the Cowboys were to have that bye in round 27, because it's just all up in the air, bro. You've got sort of no control of your destiny inside that final round. So that's going to be fascinating. It's going to be so cool to see what happens to the Parramatta Eels. But to go into their run to the finals, it's no small task, bro. They've got the Cowboys, the Storm, the Dragons, the Broncos, the Roosters, and the Panthers, and then that bye in the final round. You look at the Dragons and you look at the Broncos, and you probably pencil them in for wins, but they've got away trips to the Cowboys and the Storm and the Panthers, and then a home game against the Eastern Suburbs. That's a really tough way to run to the finals. And overall, man, that's one of the more difficult draws that I've overlooked so far. Yeah, there's a bit of zigzagging for him, but that's not the issue. The issue is the strength of opposition, man. They're taking on blockbuster sides twice over in 2023, bro. So I think their second half of the season could provide more fruitfulness, could be richer for them. Just by reading all that, I think they could have a slow start to the season. But if they do have a strong start to the year, I mean, that's going to set them up rather bloody beautifully for 2023 and their championship aspirations. Excuse me. Guys, thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the very next episode. Take care. Adios.